Man, after 5 years of driving for a rideshare app, I thought I'd seen it all. But that Thursday night, a passenger got into my car and told me something that made me pull over, turn off the engine, and cry like a baby. What she revealed to me completely changed the way I see life. And the worst part, she had no idea that I was exactly the person who needed to hear that at that moment. Okay, let me properly introduce myself, right? My name is Rodrigo. I'm 34 years old, and for 5 years, I've been hustling as a rideshare driver here in Chicago. It wasn't planned, not at all. Life kind of pushed me into it after my marriage fell apart, and I lost my job at a factory in the suburbs. But anyway, I'm not going to sit here and feel sorry for myself. That's a story for another day. The thing is, on that day, March 15th, a Thursday I'll never forget, it was pouring rain. The kind of Chicago rain that feels like the sky just opened up and dumped everything at once, you know? I was in the Wicker Park area, waiting for a ride to pop up, when one came through on the app. It was a short trip, only about 10 minutes, from a fancy building on Michigan Avenue to, well, the destination was strange. A hospital on the west side. Nothing out of the ordinary, right? But when I got to the building and saw the passenger coming down, man, something about her struck me. She was an elegant woman, must have been in her late 50s, with well-styled gray hair and expensive business attire, that sort of thing. But what really got to me was her demeanor. You know when you look at someone and you can just tell they're carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders? That was exactly it. "Good evening," she said as she got into the car, her voice a little shaky. "I'm sorry for the delay. I forgot something upstairs." "No problem at all, ma'am," I replied, giving a quick glance in the rearview mirror. "Going to St. Mark's Hospital, right? It's confirmed on the app." "That's right." She sighed heavily. That's right? Man, I've had a lot of nervous passengers in my life. People going to the hospital, you know? It's always tense. But there was something different about this woman. She wasn't just nervous. She was, I don't know, like she was carrying some very heavy secret. I pulled away from Michigan Avenue into that insane Thursday night traffic. The rain was drumming on the roof of my old Cavalier, and she was silent for about 5 minutes. I'm not one of those drivers who forces conversation, you know? To each their own. But then she started fiddling with her phone, and I heard her canceling something. "Hi, Maria. It's me. Look, I won't be able to make it to dinner tonight. Something important came up." No, everything's fine. It's just that..." She paused, looking out the window. "It's just that there's someone who needs me tonight." She hung up the phone and sighed again. That's when she realized I was listening. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know. An Uber driver isn't a therapist, right?" I laughed. "Listen, ma'am, I've heard things in this backseat that you wouldn't believe. If you need to vent, my lips are sealed." She gave a weak little laugh. "Yeah, maybe it would be good to talk to someone." And that's when it all started, man. She began to tell me she was a doctor, recently retired, who had lost her husband a few months ago. She said she didn't have any children, that her whole life had revolved around her work and her marriage. And now, she felt a bit lost. "You know how it is," she said. "You spend your whole life taking care of others, and when you stop to think, you realize there's no one to take care of you." Man, that hit me hard. After my divorce, that was exactly how I felt. Like I had spent so much time being a husband, being an employee, being this and that I forgot to be myself. "Are you going to visit someone at the hospital?" I asked, already half guessing the answer. "I am," she replied, and her voice got even quieter. "A very special person. Someone who is perhaps one of the most important people in my life. And I only recently discovered that." Look, I was already curious, right? But I respected her space. We were getting close to the hospital when she did something that caught me off guard. Would it be too bold of me to ask you to wait for me?" she asked. "I know that's not how it works, but..." "No, ma'am, no problem," I said before she could even finish. "You can pay. For the ride, I'll mark it as completed, and I'll just wait here. When you're done, we'll figure it out." "Thank you," she said, and I swear I saw her eyes welling up. "You don't know how much this means to me." When we arrived at the hospital, she grabbed her purse, but before getting out, she turned to me. "What's your name again?" "Rodrigo, ma'am." "Rodrigo," she repeated. "My name is Beatrice. Dr. Beatrice, but you can just call me Beatrice, okay?" "Okay, Ms. Beatrice." "Rodrigo," she said, with a seriousness that gave me goosebumps. "I'm going to ask you something a little strange. If you want, you can come up with me. The person I'm going to visit, she has no one. And sometimes I think a stranger who shows kindness is worth more than a crowd of indifferent acquaintances. Man, I was a bit speechless. Me? Go up to a hospital with a passenger I had just met 20 minutes ago? But something in the way she spoke, in the sincerity of her eyes, touched me deeply. If you don't think it would be intrusive, I said. On the contrary, she replied. I think Marina would love to meet you. Marina. That was the first time I heard her name. If only I had known then everything that Marina would come to mean in my life. We got out of the car in the hospital parking lot. The rain had let up, but there was still a fine drizzle. Beatrice grabbed a small bouquet of flowers from the back seat. I hadn't even seen her get them. She likes daisies, she explained, seeing me looking. She says, they represent new beginning. We went into the hospital, passed through the reception area, which, by the way, was a madhouse, people everywhere, and took the elevator to the 4th floor. On the way, Beatrice started to explain more about who this Marina was. She's 28 years old, she began, clutching the flowers to her chest. She's a nurse here at the hospital, one of the best I've ever known in my life. But 3 months ago, she found out she has cancer. My heart sank. 28 years old, man. Pretty much my age when I got divorced and thought my life was over. Except she was facing something much worse. And she doesn't have any family? I asked. None. Beatrice shook her head sadly. She's been an orphan since she was a little girl. She spent her whole life taking care of everyone, and now that she needs it most, her voice trailed off. The elevator stopped on the 4th floor, and the doors opened to a typical hospital corridor, that smell of disinfectant, fluorescent lights, people walking back and forth with worried looks on their faces. Beatrice, I said as we walked down the hall, can I ask you a personal question? Of course. How did you meet this Marina? She stopped walking for a second, looked at me with those eyes that had seen so much in life, and said, she took care of my husband in his final days. Man, it started to click. The connection between these two women wasn't just professional, it was emotional, it was human. And now you want to return the favor, I said, more as a statement than a question. It's not just returning the favor, Rodrigo, she said, starting to walk again. It's that when I look at Marina, I see... She didn't finish the sentence, but I felt there was a lot more to this whole story. We stopped in front of room 412. Beatrice took a deep breath, smoothed her hair, and held the daisies tightly. Ready? She asked, more to herself than to me. Ready, I replied. She knocked lightly on the door, and a weak voice from inside answered, come in. Man, you have no idea what's coming. Stick with me because this story is going to hit you just like it hit me that night. Because when I walked into that room and saw Marina for the first time, I had no idea that my entire life was about to do a 180. When she told me who this person in the hospital was, my world fell apart. Man, when we walked into that room, I wasn't prepared for what I was about to see. You know those moments when you feel like your life is going to be divided into before and after? It was exactly like that. The room was small, a typical public hospital room with 2 beds, but only one was occupied. And in it was a girl. No, I can't call her a girl. She was 28, right? But man, when you saw her there, tiny in that bed, with a colorful scarf on her head, and a smile that lit up the whole room, you thought of a child. Hi, Beatrice, she said, with an energy that took me by surprise. Her voice was weak, but the enthusiasm was real. You came, and you brought someone? Beatrice approached the bed and kissed Marina's forehead with a tenderness that, man, it reminded me of my own mother when I was a little boy and got sick. You know that genuine affection, without any hidden agenda. Marina, this is Rodrigo, Beatrice said, pulling me closer. He was very kind to me today. He gave me a ride and, well, I thought you two should meet. Marina looked at me with huge brown eyes, a little sunken from the treatment, but they shone in a way I had never seen before. It was as if she could see your soul, you know? Hi, Rodrigo. She extended her hand to me. I'm sorry I can't get up, but today isn't a good day for my muscles. I squeezed her hand. It was thin, warm, but surprisingly strong, and said, no problem at all, Marina. It's a pleasure to meet you. Rodrigo is a rideshare driver, Beatrice explained, arranging the daisies in a small vase that was already next to the bed. And a great listener. Marina laughed. And man, that laugh. It was a pure laugh, you know? The kind that comes straight from the soul. Ah, then you must have stories to tell, she said. I always wonder what your life must be like, meeting so many different people every day. I sat down in the chair next to the bed, still a little awkward. Yeah, there's all kinds of things. But today I think I found the most special story. Beatrice looked at me, a little curious, and sat down on the other side of the bed. That's when she started to explain more about how she had met Marina. Rodrigo, she said, holding Marina's hand. I told you she took care of my husband, right? But I didn't tell you the whole story. Marina squeezed Beatrice's hand and said softly, You don't have to. Yes, I do, Beatrice interrupted. Someone needs to know how special you are. And then she started to tell the story. Man, it was a heartbreaking story. Beatrice's husband, Dr. Anthony, had a sudden stroke 3 months ago. He was rushed here, to the same hospital, to the ICU. Beatrice spent days and days there, never leaving his side, practically living at the hospital. I was a wreck, she said, and I saw her eyes start to water. 42 years of marriage, Rodrigo. 42 years. And suddenly you see the person you love most in the world on life support. Marina listened in silence, but I could tell she knew this story. She had probably lived it with Beatrice. The doctor said he wouldn't make it, Beatrice continued, that it was a matter of days. And I just panicked. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't even think straight. Then she looked at Marina with a gratitude you could feel in the air. And that's when this little angel showed up. Marina shook her head. Beatrice, stop! I'm not going to stop, Beatrice said, now with tears streaming down her face. Rodrigo needs to know what kind of person you are. Man, I already had a lump in my throat. Even without knowing what was coming, I felt like I was witnessing something very special. Marina wasn't even the nurse assigned to my husband, Beatrice explained. She worked in another department, but she saw me there in the hallway, crying alone, and she just came over. She was in a bad way, Marina said softly. I couldn't pretend I didn't see her. You brought me a coffee, Beatrice remembered, smiling through her tears. A simple coffee, the kind you get from a hospital machine. But you sat next to me and said, Look, I don't know what you're going through, but you can't fall apart right now. He needs you to be strong. I got a chill. Those words. Man, how many times in my life did I need to hear something like that, and there was no one to say it? And then Marina did something I will never forget, Beatrice continued. She asked to switch departments temporarily so she could personally take care of Anthony. What do you mean? I asked, already knowing the answer would be moving. Marina answered a little shyly. I told the coordinator I had experience in the ICU and asked to be put on Dr. Anthony's case. I said the family needed special care. You lied to your own boss? I asked, impressed. I didn't lie. She gave me that smile of hers. I said I had experience, and I did, and that the family needed special care. And they really did. Beatrice took a tissue from her purse and wiped her face. Rodrigo, in my husband's last 5 days, Marina never left his side. She took care of him, as if he were her own family. Oh, Beatrice! Marina tried to protest. Let me finish, Beatrice said. She talked to him, even though he was unconscious. She explained all the procedures, brought him classical music she had found out he liked, took care of every detail to make him comfortable. Man, I was starting to understand the depth of the connection between these two women. It wasn't just professional, it was family. And with me, Rodrigo, Beatrice continued, she did more than any relative would. She made me eat, took me to shower, made me sleep for a few hours. When I was falling apart from despair, she would hold me and say, he can feel the love you're sending him. Now I understood why Beatrice was there, why she had canceled dinner, why she was so worried about Marina. And when he died, Beatrice said, now crying openly, Marina stayed with me until I was able to leave the hospital. She helped me with the paperwork, called the funeral home, drove me home. Rodrigo, she did everything a child would do. I looked at Marina, who was quiet, a little embarrassed by all the praise. And you did all this without knowing them? I asked. Marina shrugged. It was the right thing to do. No, it wasn't, I said. Most people would do the bare minimum, and that's it. It's just that. Marina hesitated, looked at Beatrice, then at me. It's just that I always imagined what it would be like to have someone care about me that much if I got sick. And then I saw Beatrice there, so desperate, and I thought, if that were me, I would want someone to take care of me like this. Man, those words hit me like a punch to the gut. My own mother died alone in a hospital 3 years ago. I was at work, my ex-wife was traveling, and she had a heart attack. When I got to the hospital, she was already gone, alone. And here was Marina, an orphan, with no family at all, doing for a stranger what I couldn't do for my own mother. And now, Beatrice said, holding both of Marina's hands, now it's my turn to take care of you. Marina smiled, but it was a sad smile. Beatrice, you already do so much. You come here every day, bring me flowers, talk to me. It's not enough, Beatrice said with a determination that impressed me. It's not even close to enough. That's when she turned to me and said, Rodrigo, can I tell you something? Marina doesn't know this yet. Marina looked at Beatrice with curiosity. What is it? She asked. Beatrice took a deep breath, like someone about to make a very important confession. Marina, you saved my life in those days. Literally. If it weren't for you, I would have completely lost it. And ever since Anthony died, I've been thinking about something. She paused, looked at me as if asking for strength, and continued. Anthony and I tried to have children our whole lives. We couldn't. We tried to adopt a few times, but there was always some bureaucratic problem. And now, at 54, I find myself alone in the world, with no one to take care of, and no one to take care of me. Marina was listening with full attention. And then I look at you, Beatrice continued, and I think you are exactly the daughter I always dreamed of having. Caring, dedicated, brave. Marina started to cry, and man, I wanted to cry with her. Beatrice, she said between sobs. Let me finish, Beatrice insisted. I know the situation is complicated. I know you're fighting this awful disease, but as long as you have breath, as long as you have life, I want you to know that you are not alone. You have family. You have a mother. Man, at that moment, I couldn't hold it in. I started crying along with them. It was too much emotion for my little rideshare driver heart that thought it had seen everything. Marina threw herself into Beatrice's arms, even weak, even hooked up to machines, and the two of them just hugged and cried. And I was there, a stranger, but at the same time feeling privileged to be witnessing the birth of that family. But I'm going to tell you something, Beatrice, Marina said when she managed to stop crying. Something I've never told anyone. She looked at me, then at Beatrice and said, I always knew who you were. Beatrice frowned. What do you mean? I need to show you something, Marina said, opening the drawer of the bedside table. Rodrigo, can you help me get that notebook? I grabbed an old-looking notebook, full of notes. What is this? Beatrice asked. Marina opened the notebook to a specific page and showed it to Beatrice. There was a newspaper clipping with a photo pasted there. But what Dr. Beatrice didn't know was that Marina was keeping a secret that would break her heart. And mine too. Man, when Marina showed that newspaper clipping, the atmosphere in the room changed completely. It was an old photo, a little yellowed, and it showed a smiling couple at a medical school graduation ceremony. It was Beatrice and her husband, about 20 years younger. Marina, Beatrice said, her voice trembling, where did you get this? Marina took a deep breath, like someone about to make a very difficult confession. Remember I told you I grew up in an orphanage, she began. The St. Vincent's home, on the east side? I remember, Beatrice replied, not understanding where this was going. When I was about 8 years old, a couple came there wanting to adopt a child, Marina said, flipping through the notebook until she found other notes. They were young doctors, recently graduated, full of dreams. They spent about 3 months visiting, getting to know the children. I felt my heart race. I was already guessing where this was going, but at the same time, I didn't want to believe it. And you remember this couple? Beatrice asked, already a little suspicious. I remember them perfectly, Marina smiled with that way she had. The woman had beautiful brown hair, always very well dressed, and she wore a floral perfume that made the whole room smell good when she passed by. The man was more shy, but he always brought some hidden candy for the kids. Beatrice put her hand to her mouth. It's not possible. They were specifically interested in me, Marina continued, and I realized this was a story she had been holding on to for a long time. They spent hours there with me, playing, talking, teaching me things. I remember the woman always saying, Marina, You're going to be a very special girl. Man, I had a lump in my throat so big I could barely swallow. The connection was getting clearer with every word. And what happened? I asked, even though I already imagined the answer. Marina sighed heavily. Bureaucracy. The couple was starting their careers. They lived in a small apartment. They didn't have the income the judge considered adequate for an adoption. On top of that, there was a problem with the paperwork that took months to resolve. And when it was resolved, Beatrice asked, with tears in her eyes, when it was resolved, they had given up, Marina said simply. The social worker explained to me that their lives had changed, that they had other plans. Beatrice started crying in silence. I saw she was doing the math in her head, remembering that time. Marina, she said between sobs, are you saying that you tried to adopt me when I was 8 years old? Marina confirmed, and I never forgot. Man, at that moment, the room went completely silent. The only sound was from the medical equipment and the rain that was still falling outside. It was as if the universe had paused to process this information. But how did you know it was us? Beatrice asked. After all this time, Marina turned the pages of the notebook and showed several other notes, newspaper clippings, even some photos printed from the internet. I never stopped looking for you, she said. When I learned to use a computer in my late teens, I searched the names I remembered. Dr. Beatrice Santos, Dr. Anthony Ferreira. I found you working here at this hospital. And why did you never approach us? I asked, fascinated by the story. Marina gave a sad little laugh. What was I supposed to say? Hi, remember me? I'm that kid you tried to adopt 15 years ago. They had moved on with their lives, built a brilliant career, become important people. Marina? Beatrice tried to interrupt. No, let me finish, Marina insisted. I kept up with your lives from a distance. I saw when you became department heads, when you won awards, when you appeared in the Medical Association magazine, and I thought, it's good that they achieved everything they dreamed of. Beatrice was devastated. You were watching us all these years, and we never even knew. It wasn't an obsession, Marina quickly explained. It was affection from a distance, you know? Like when you root for someone you like, but from far away. I was trying to process it all. The orphaned girl who followed the lives of the parents she almost had from afar, and then by a strange twist of fate, ended up taking care of the husband of the woman who almost became her mother. Marina, I said, when you saw Beatrice here at the hospital, you knew who she was? From the very first second, she replied. I recognized her immediately, even after all these years. And even so, you decided to approach her and take care of Dr. Anthony. That's why I approached her, she corrected me. Rodrigo, when I saw Beatrice desperate in that hallway, crying alone, my heart broke. This was the woman who once wanted to give me a family, suffering in a way I had never seen anyone suffer. Marina stopped for a second, wiped her eyes, which were welling up, and continued. I thought, maybe this is my chance to repay the kindness they wanted to give me when I was a child. Man, at that moment I couldn't hold back anymore. I started to cry for real, in that manly way of trying to hide it, but failing. That girl had spent her whole life holding on to gratitude for people who barely remembered her. And when she got the chance, she dedicated herself entirely to taking care of them. You did all that knowing who we were? Beatrice asked, in disbelief. I did all that because you were who you were, Marina replied. You showed me, even for a short time, what it was like to have someone who cared about me. And when I saw you in need, I wanted to be that person for you. Beatrice got up from the chair and leaned in to hug Marina with a strength that I thought would break the girl. My daughter, she said. My daughter? Mom, Marina replied. And man, that word came out with so much love that I got goosebumps. They stayed there hugging and crying, and I was just standing there, a little lost, but at the same time feeling privileged to be witnessing that moment. It was like watching two souls reuniting after a lifetime of being apart. When they separated, Marina continued to show the notebook. There were detailed notes about their careers, about treatments they had developed, even about Dr. Anthony's death. Marina, I said, did you become a nurse because of them? Totally, she answered without hesitation. Ever since I was little, I dreamed of being a doctor like them, but I couldn't afford medical school, so I became a nurse, which was the closest I could get. And you always worked here at this hospital? Beatrice asked. Always. Ever since I graduated 6 years ago, I've worked here. I always hoped to run into you in the hallways one day, but you worked in different departments than me. Until the day my husband was admitted, Beatrice concluded. Until that day, Marina confirmed. When I found out Dr. Anthony was in the ICU, and I saw you there in the hallway, I thought, now's my time to help. Man, I was impressed by the sheer destiny of this story. Two people who should have met 20 years ago, who were separated by bureaucracy, and who the universe conspired to bring together again at the most difficult moment for both of them. And now, Marina said, closing the notebook, now that you know everything, I can die in peace. Don't say that, Beatrice said immediately. You're not going to die. We're going to fight this disease together. Marina smiled, but it was a realistic smile. Beatrice, we both know the chances aren't good. I don't want to hear that, Beatrice interrupted. Marina, I lost you once because of some idiotic bureaucracy. I'm not going to lose you again. But no buts, Beatrice said, with that determined, doctor's voice I imagine she used with her patients. Marina, I want to ask you a question, and I want an honest answer. You can ask. Beatrice held Marina's hands and looked her right in the eyes. Would you be willing to come live with me? In my house? I'll hire the best caregivers, the best medical team. You'll have all the comfort you deserve. Would you be willing to let me take care of you the way a mother takes care of her daughter? Marina was silent for a time that felt like an eternity. I could see she was torn between wanting to accept and the fear of being a burden. I don't want to be a burden, she began. You would be a gift, Beatrice interrupted. Marina, I have a big empty house full of stored up love that I was never able to give to anyone. Let me be your mother in your for the time we have together. Marina looked at me as if asking for my opinion. Marina, I said, I've only known you both for 2 hours, but I can guarantee you one thing. This woman loves you for real, and true love isn't a burden. It's fuel. She smiled and looked back at Beatrice. Mom, she said, and that word gave me goosebumps all over again. I accept. When we discovered who this family was, it was a shock no one expected. But hold on, it doesn't stop there. Because what Marina had to show us in that notebook was going to change everything again. Man, after that moment when Marina agreed to go live with Beatrice, I thought the day's emotions had reached their limit. How naive of me, right? Because Marina still had more things to show in that cursed notebook. There's one more thing I haven't told you, Marina said, flipping through the notebook to a more recent section. Something I found out a little while ago, and that might change everything. Beatrice and I exchanged glances. Change everything. We had already discovered that they had a 20-year connection, that Marina had followed their lives from afar, that she had become a nurse. Inspired by them, what else could there be? Marina, Beatrice said, still holding her hand. Daughter, you can tell me anything. You don't need to be afraid. Marina took a deep breath and opened the notebook to a page full of handwritten notes and some printed photos. Remember I said I always followed your lives from afar? She began. Well, I found out some things that even you don't know about yourself. She pointed to a photo showing Beatrice and her husband at an awards ceremony. This photo is from 2018, when you won the Medical Excellence Award for your cardiology research, Marina explained. I remember I was so proud when I saw it in the Medical Association magazine. You kept that? Beatrice asked, emotional. I kept everything, Marina replied. Every one of your achievements was like my own. But when I started to research your lives more deeply, I discovered other things. She turned the page and showed some handwritten notes. For example, did you know that in 2003, you tried to adopt another child? After me? Beatrice frowned. How did you know that? Research, Mom. Marina smiled. When you work for years at the same hospital, you know people in every department, including legal. Man, I was impressed by the level of investigation this girl had done. She was like a private detective of her own life. And what did you find out? I asked, already curious. Marina looked at Beatrice with a hesitant expression. You tried to adopt a 6-year-old boy in 2003, and it also didn't work out due to bureaucratic issues. That's true, Beatrice confirmed, with a sad look in her eyes. Gabriel, I remember him perfectly. And you tried again in 2007, Marina continued. A 4-year-old girl. Sophia, Beatrice sighed. That didn't work out either. And in 2011, you signed up for international adoption. Marina, Beatrice interrupted. How do you know all this? Marina closed the notebook for a second and looked at both of us. Because I spent years trying to understand why you gave up on adopting me. And I found out that you didn't just give up on me. You tried to have children in every way possible for almost 15 years. Beatrice started crying again. It was our biggest dream. I know, Marina said, squeezing her hand. And that's why when I saw you suffering with Dad's illness, I thought, they deserve to have someone to take care of and someone to care for them. Man, at that moment, I had a lump in my throat the size of a golf ball. That girl had spent her whole life watching the parents she almost had, rooting for them, and when she had the chance, she dedicated herself completely. But there's something I discovered recently, Marina said, opening the notebook again. That might be the most important thing of all. She showed a page with several notes and some photocopied documents. Do you remember why the 1999 adoption didn't work out? She asked. Beatrice thought for a bit. It was several things. Our income at the hour, time, the small apartment, a problem with the paperwork. What problem with the paperwork? Marina insisted. Oh, I don't know. It was so long ago. I think there was something wrong with the birth certificate or something like that. Marina shook her head. No, Mom. The problem wasn't with your paperwork. She turned the page and showed a photocopy of an official document. The problem was with me. What do you mean? I asked. Marina took a deep breath, like someone about to tell something very heavy. When I was 8 years old, and you were trying to adopt me, a woman showed up at the orphanage claiming to be my biological mother. Beatrice put her hand to her mouth. What? A woman appeared out of nowhere, with a story that she had abandoned me out of desperation when I was a baby, but that she was now in a position to raise me, Marina explained. She contested the adoption process. And what happened to her? I asked. Marina gave a bitter smile. After 3 months of a legal battle, they found out she wasn't my mother. She was a con artist who did this to receive compensation from the state. But by that point, Beatrice started to understand. By that point, you had already given up, Marina finished. The process had taken so long, caused so much stress, that you decided it wasn't meant to be. Man, I was starting to get angry. Angry at that con artist woman, angry at the bureaucratic system, angry at life for having separated these two people over. Something so ridiculous. Marina, Beatrice said, with a voice I had never heard before, a mixture of sadness, anger, and regret. Are you telling me that we gave up on you because of a scam? You didn't give up on me, Marina said quickly. You were misled by the system. But we could have insisted. We could have waited longer. Mom, Marina interrupted. You did what you could, and look how funny life is. She smiled, but it was a smile full of irony. If you had adopted me back then, I never would have become a nurse. I never would have worked at this hospital, and I never would have been here to take care of Dad when he needed it most. Beatrice was silent, processing that information. It's as if the universe conspired for us to meet again at the right time, Marina continued. At the time when you most needed a daughter, and I most needed a family. I was impressed with the emotional maturity of that girl. She had turned a tragedy into a life lesson. But Marina, I said, how did you find all this out? When I found out I was sick, I wanted to understand my own story, she explained. I went after the orphanage documents, the adoption processes, everything. And that's when I found out about the con artist. She showed another document, and I found out one more thing. What? Beatrice asked, already a little wary of more revelations. Marina hesitated for a second, looked at me, then at Beatrice. The woman who pretended to be my mother, she did the same thing with 3 other children that same year. She prevented 3 adoptions out of pure financial greed. What a witch, I said, unable to hold back. Rodrigo, Marina said. One of those children was Gabriel. Beatrice's eyes widened. The boy we tried to adopt in 2003? The same. His adoption was also sabotaged by the same woman. Man, at that moment, I felt a rage that made me want to punch the wall. How many families had this wicked woman destroyed? How many children were left without parents because of her greed? And Sophia? And the others? Beatrice. It wasn't her directly, but the system had become so suspicious after the scandal that any adoption process became a nightmare, Marina explained. You were victims of a broken system. Beatrice started to cry. But this time it was a different kind of crying. It was a cry of anger, of frustration, of what if? Marina, she said between sobs, how many years of our lives did we lose because of that wretched woman? None, Marina replied, with a firmness that gave me goosebumps. Mom, if we had met before, we wouldn't have had the experiences that brought us here, she pointed to me. Rodrigo, for example, wouldn't be here today if our story had been different, and I'm sure he's going to be very important to our family. Man, when she said that, I felt something in my chest that I can't even explain. What did she mean? I was going to be important to their family. I was just the Uber driver who got lucky and picked up the right ride at the right time. Marina, I said, a little awkwardly, you're the person who brought my mother to me on the night I needed her most, she interrupted me. You're the person who is here, listening to our story, getting emotional with us. Rodrigo, you're part of this family now. Folks, I swear I tried not to cry, but what happened next? But hold on, it doesn't stop there. What Marina revealed next broke me in half and completely changed my view on destiny, family, and love. Man, when Marina included me in that makeshift family, I was a little speechless. How was I part of it? I was just the driver who was in the right place at the right time. Or maybe it wasn't just that. Marina, I said, still a little in shock. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, she smiled. You just need to accept that sometimes the universe puts the right people in our path when we need them most. Beatrice looked at me with a tenderness I hadn't expected. Rodrigo, if you hadn't agreed to bring me here today, if you hadn't agreed to come up with me, I would have never discovered this whole truth about Marina. Yeah, Marina agreed, and I never would have had the courage to tell all this if I didn't have a witness. Someone from outside to confirm that I'm not making any of this up, you know? I laughed, still a little self-conscious. Are you sure you want a stranger meddling in your lives? You're not a stranger, Marina said with that simplicity of hers. Your family, period. And that's when she closed the notebook and got a more serious expression on her face. But there's one last thing I need to tell you, she said. Something I've never told anyone, not even the doctors or the hospital psychologist. Beatrice leaned forward. What is it, daughter? Marina took a deep breath, like someone about to make the most difficult confession of her life. Remember I said, I always followed your lives from afar, she began. Well, it wasn't just from afar. What do you mean? I asked. Marina opened the notebook again to a section I hadn't seen before. There were photos, a lot of photos. Photos of Beatrice and Anthony at social events, leaving the hospital, at the supermarket, walking in the park. Marina, Beatrice said, a little spooked. You followed us? Not exactly followed, Marina quickly defended herself. But I knew where you lived. I knew the places you frequented. And sometimes, on my days off, I would pass by those places hoping to run into you. Man, that was kind of stalkerish, right? But at the same time, coming from that sweet girl, it seemed more like a daughter observing her parents from a distance than anything scary. How many times did you do that? Beatrice asked. Marina lowered her head, a little embarrassed. Many. For years. I knew you went for a walk every Sunday in Lincoln Park. I knew you always had lunch at that Italian restaurant in Wicker Park on your wedding anniversary. I knew Beatrice bought flowers every Thursday at the flower shop on State Street. How did you know all that? I asked, impressed. Observation, patience, and a lot of free time, she shrugged. When you don't have family, you end up creating strange connections. Beatrice was processing that information with a confused look on her face. Marina, did you ever get close to us? Marina turned a few pages of the notebook and showed a photo that made my jaw drop. It was a photo of her with Beatrice and Anthony, all three smiling at the camera. This photo is from 2015, Marina explained. You were in Lincoln Park on your Sunday walk when it started to rain really hard. You ran to take shelter in a cafe, and I was there too. I remember that, Beatrice exclaimed. A nice girl asked to take a picture of us because she thought you were a beautiful couple. That was me, Marina confirmed, smiling shyly. I made up that I was doing a project on lasting love for college. You talked to us, Beatrice said, incredulous. I talked with you for about 20 minutes. You told me how you met, how long you had been married, talked about your plans to travel to Europe. Man, I was fascinated. Marina had a casual meeting with the parents she almost had, and they had no idea. And how did it feel? I asked. How did you feel? Marina was silent for a while, as if she were reliving that moment. It was the happiest day of my life up until then, she finally said. I finally got to talk to you like a normal person. Hear your voices, see your smiles up close. Feel like for a few minutes I was a part of your lives. And why did you never identify yourself? Beatrice asked. Fear, Marina answered simply. Fear that you would remember me and feel uncomfortable. Fear that you would think I was crazy. Fear of ruining the perfect image I had of you. Marina turned a few more pages and showed other notes. After that meeting, I started to get closer, not to you directly, but to your world. What do you mean? I asked. I started to frequent the same places as you. The same supermarket, the same bakery, the same pharmacy. Not to find you, but to feel connected to the life you were living. Beatrice shook her head, a little incredulous. Marina, honey, isn't that a little obsessive? Marina finished. I know it seems like it, but to me it wasn't obsession. It was affection. It was the only way I had to feel like your daughter. Man, when she said that, my heart ached. Imagine the loneliness of that girl, creating bonds from a distance, feeding on crumbs of connection. And that's how I found out when Dr. Anthony got sick, Marina continued. I saw you at the hospital that day. Even before he was admitted, you were doing routine exams, and I could tell by the look on your faces that something wasn't right. You saw us that day, Beatrice. I did, and I started to follow it discreetly. When I found out he had been admitted to the I see you. I didn't think twice. I asked to be transferred to that department. You did that for us, Beatrice said, not as a question, but as a realization. I did it because I could finally repay all the love you tried to give me 20 years ago, Marina replied. Even if you didn't know it was me. Marina showed a few more pages of the notebook. There were detailed notes about Dr. Anthony's treatment, about Beatrice's emotional state, about every conversation they had had. Marina, I said, you wrote everything down. Everything, she confirmed. Every kind word Beatrice said to her husband, every time she thanked me, every smile she managed to give even in the middle of her suffering. I wrote everything down because they were the only real family moments I had. Beatrice started to cry again. Daughter, how did you handle all that alone? I wasn't alone, Marina smiled. I had you. Even without you knowing, I had you. Marina turned to the last page of the notebook. There was a handwritten letter. And there's one last thing, she said. Something I wrote when I found out I was sick. She held the letter but didn't open it. It's a letter I wrote to you, even before I knew you would find out who I was. It's a goodbye and a thank you. Marina, Beatrice tried to speak. Let me read it, Marina insisted. Please, it's important. She opened the letter and began to read in a firm but emotional voice. To my dear parents that I never had, but who always loved me from a distance. If you are reading this, it's because you finally had the courage to approach me, or because someone thought you should know the truth. Man, when she started reading that letter, I felt the world stop. It was as if all the pain, all the loneliness, all the unrequited love of a lifetime was coming out in those words. I want you to know that you were the most present parents in my life. Even while being absent, you taught me to be a doctor without even knowing it. You taught me to take care of people without ever teaching me. You gave me a family without giving me a home. Beatrice couldn't stop crying anymore. And man, neither could I. And now that I know I'm going to leave sooner than expected, I want you to know that I'm leaving happy. Because I was able to take care of you the way a daughter takes care of her parents. Because I was able to repay the love you gave me when I was a child. And because, in the end, I was always your daughter, even without you knowing. Marina stopped reading and looked at Beatrice. I wrote this thinking I was going to die without you ever knowing who I was. But look how life is full of surprises. Now you know, and I can die being a real daughter. And that's when Marina made a request that changed my life forever. Man, after Marina finished reading that letter, the room was filled with a silence that seemed to last an eternity. It was as if the three of us were processing the depth of love that girl had carried alone for so many years. Beatrice was sobbing quietly, holding Marina's hand as if she was afraid she would disappear again. And me, I was just there, a 34-year-old rideshare driver, crying like a baby because I had just witnessed the purest love story I had ever seen in my life. "Marina," Beatrice said when she could speak again. "Daughter, how did you manage to carry all this by yourself?" Marina smiled, but it was a tired smile, the kind of smile from someone who has already made peace with their own pain. "It wasn't easy," she replied. "There were nights I cried myself to sleep. There were moments I wanted to give up on everything, leave Chicago, start a life far away from you so I wouldn't suffer anymore." "Why didn't you?" I asked. "Because you don't abandon love," she said simply. "Even when it hurts, even when it's unrequited, even when it seems meaningless, you don't abandon love." Man, those words hit me like a punch to the chest. Since my separation 2 years ago, I had closed myself off from the world. I had decided it was better to be alone than to risk hurting again. And there was Marina, teaching me that you don't abandon love. "Marina," Beatrice said, "now that I know everything, now that you're officially my daughter, I want you to come live with me. I want to take care of you. I want you to have everything you deserve." Marina slowly shook her head. "Mom, I already said I'll accept, but there's one condition." "What is it?" Marina looked at me with those eyes that seemed to see into our souls. "I want Rodrigo to be part of our family too." "Marina," I started to protest. "No," she interrupted me. "Rodrigo, you don't understand what you represent in this whole story." I shook my head. Honestly, I was still a little lost, trying to figure out how I ended up there. "Rodrigo," Marina continued, "you were the instrument the universe used to bring a mother and a daughter together who had been lost from each other for 20 years. Do you think that was a coincidence?" "I just gave a ride," I said, a little awkwardly. "You did much more than that," Beatrice said, looking at me with a warmth I hadn't expected. "Rodrigo, you could have just dropped me off at the hospital door and left, but you chose to stay. You chose to come up with me. You chose to be a part of this story." Marina moved on the bed, trying to sit up better, and continued. "And there's something else. When I look at you, Rodrigo, I see someone who is just as alone as I always was." Man, she had hit the nail on the head. "How did she know that?" "How do you know?" I asked. "By the way you look at us," she answered. "It's the same way I used to look at Beatrice and Dr. Anthony when I saw them from afar. It's the look of someone who has a lot of love to give, but has no one to give it to. My God, that girl was a psychologist disguised as a nurse." "Rodrigo," she continued, "when was the last time you felt part of a family?" I thought for a while. The truth was, since the separation, I had completely isolated myself. My parents had died. I had no siblings. My friends had their own families. I lived in a solitude that I pretended didn't bother me. "It's been a long time," I admitted. "Exactly," Marina smiled. "And when was the last time you genuinely worried about someone?" Man, that question caught me off guard. When was it really? I had turned into a robot. I worked. I slept. I worked again. I didn't get involved with anyone. I didn't worry about anyone. "Today," I replied without thinking. "Today, with you two." "Exactly," Marina said, with that smile of hers that lit up the room. "And you think that's a coincidence? Do you think it's normal for a rideshare driver to go up to a hospital room with a stranger and get emotional over her story?" Beatrice was listening to our conversation with total attention. "What are you trying to say?" I asked. Marina took a deep breath, like someone about to make a very important request. "Rodrigo, I want to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer." "Go ahead. Would you be willing to be my brother?" Man, when she asked that, I felt the world stop. Brother? What did she mean, brother? "Marina," I tried to speak. "Let me explain," she interrupted me. "Rodrigo, I spent 28 years of my life dreaming of having a family. And now, when I finally found my mother, when I can finally have this, I don't want it to be incomplete." She looked at Beatrice, then at me. "I want to have a brother too. I want to have someone who worries about me, who comes to visit me, who tells me things, who lets me take care of him too." "But Marina," I said, a little lost, "we've only known each other for a few hours." "So what?" she laughed. "Family isn't just blood, Rodrigo. Family is a choice. It's connection. It's love." Beatrice looked at me and said, "Rodrigo, can I ask you a personal question?" "You can. Do you have anyone in your life? A girlfriend? A wife? Children?" "No," I replied. "I separated 2 years ago, and since then, Since then, I've kind of given up on connecting with people. Why? Marina asked. Man, how could I explain to two women I barely knew that I was afraid of getting hurt again? How could I tell them I had closed myself off from the world because it was easier to feel nothing than to risk suffering? Fear, I admitted. Fear of being disappointed again. Marina and Beatrice exchanged glances. Rodrigo, Marina said with a seriousness that impressed me, you're afraid of getting hurt, but you're slowly killing yourself by living alone. She was right. I knew she was right. And besides, she continued, you won't be taking a risk with strangers. You'll be taking a risk with me and Beatrice. And I guarantee you one thing. We will never abandon you or hurt you. How can you guarantee that? I asked. Because, Marina smiled, we know what it's like to be alone. We know how much it hurts. We would never do that to someone we love. Man, when she said, someone we love, my heart jumped. She was talking about me. A girl I had met a few hours ago was saying she loved me. Marina, I said, my voice a little choked up. Why are you doing this for me? Because you did it for me first, she replied. Rodrigo, when you agreed to come up here with me, when you stayed here listening to my story, when you cried with us, you gave me the most precious thing there is, genuine attention. She held my hand, and I want to return that. I want to give you a family. I want you to have someone to call when you're sad, someone to celebrate with when you're happy, someone who will worry if you don't show up. Man, at that moment, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I started to cry for real, in that ugly, sobbing way. Marina, I said between sobs, I don't know if I deserve this. Of course you do, Beatrice said, getting up and coming to hug me. Rodrigo, you have a gigantic heart. You just forgot to use it. And besides, Marina laughed, even with her eyes full of tears. I'm not doing this out of charity. I need a big brother to protect me, to fight with the doctors when they're rude to me, to bring me chocolate when Mom won't let me have any. I laughed through my tears. You want a brother or a henchman? I want both, she replied, laughing too. Beatrice went back to her chair and watched us with a huge smile on her face. So, Marina said, do you accept? I looked at her, then at Beatrice, then at that hospital room that had transformed into the place where my life completely changed. Marina, I said, I'll be your brother, but on one condition. What is it? You have to teach me how to be a brother, because I've never been a brother to anyone. Rodrigo, she smiled, being a brother is just like driving. You learn by doing. Man, at that moment, I had to leave the room because I couldn't stop crying. How was it possible that in a single night, my entire life had changed? How was it possible that I had gained a family out of nowhere? But 3 months later, I got a phone call that changed everything again. Man, those 3 months that passed after that night at the hospital were the most intense of my life. And to think I believed that after 30, life had no more surprises, right? Marina went to live at Beatrice's house. A beautiful house in Wicker Park with a garden, a pool, all that rich people stuff. Beatrice hired a full medical team, nurses, physical therapists, even a private chef to make special meals for Marina and me. Man, I practically became a resident of the house too. Every day after work, I would go there. I would bring movies for us to watch. I'd talk to Marina about everything and nothing. I'd help Beatrice with practical things. For the first time in years, I had a routine that revolved around people I loved. Marina had good days and bad days. On the good days, she would sit on the veranda reading, gardening with Beatrice, telling stories from the hospital. On the bad days, she could barely get out of bed. But even so, she made a point of talking to me when I arrived. Big brother, she would say. Yes, she had given me that terrible nickname. Tell me about your day. Who were the craziest passengers? And I would tell her. I'd tell her about the stressed out executives, the old ladies who wanted to talk the whole ride, the young people leaving the club in the morning. And she would laugh, even when she was feeling sick. Beatrice had completely transformed too. The elegant but sad woman I met that rainy night had become a dedicated mother who lived for her daughter. She studied Marina's cancer, researched alternative treatments, contacted doctors abroad. Rodrigo, she told me one day, while we were having coffee in the kitchen and Marina was sleeping, I never thought I would be a mother at 54, but now I understand why I was never able to have children before. Why? I asked. Because I was being saved for her, she replied, with that absolute certainty. Marina needed a mother exactly now, at this point in her life. And I needed to be a mother exactly now, after losing Anthony. Man, that made so much sense to me. Sometimes life delays our blessings not out of malice, but because there's a right time for everything. We had created a beautiful routine. I'd have lunch there every Sunday. We'd have movie nights on Thursdays, and every Friday I'd bring sweets from the bakery Marina had discovered she loved. She said it was the only pleasure the cancer couldn't take from her, but I could tell she was getting weaker. No matter how many different treatments the doctors tried, no matter how hard she fought, the disease was winning. It was a Thursday, June 25th, that everything changed. I was in the middle of a ride, taking a guy to the airport, when my phone rang. It was Beatrice, and from the time, 2:30 in the morning, I knew it wasn't good news. "Rodrigo," her voice was broken. "Can you come here?" "What happened?" I asked, already feeling my heart race. "It's Marina," she said, and started to cry. She's not doing well. I think today's the day." Man, I dropped everything. I apologized to the passenger, quickly explained the situation, and he was super understanding and called another ride. In 20 minutes, I was at Beatrice's house. When I arrived, the night nurse was there, and a doctor too. Marina was in her room, in the bed they had adapted with all the necessary medical equipment. "How is she?" asked Beatrice. "Conscious," she replied. "She specifically asked me to call you. She said she had important things to tell you." I went into the room, and Marina was there, tiny in the bed, but her eyes lit up when she saw me. "Big brother," she smiled weakly. "You came." "Of course I came," I said, sitting in the chair next to the bed. "How are you feeling?" "Tired," she answered honestly. "Very tired. I think it's time." "Marina," I tried to protest. "No," she interrupted me. "Rodrigo, I'm at peace. These 3 months were the best of my life. I finally had a family. I finally was a daughter and a sister. She held my hand with the strength she had left. And you know what's the coolest part? I'm not going to die alone. I'm going to die with my mom and my brother by my side." Man, at that moment I started to cry. I couldn't accept that I was going to lose my little sister only 3 months after finding her. "Marina," I said through tears, "I don't know what I'll do without you." "You'll be exactly what I taught you to be," she smiled. "You'll take care of Mom when I can't anymore. You'll continue to be this caring person I discovered. And you'll open your heart to other people too." Beatrice entered the room at that moment, carrying a box. "Marina," she said, "are you sure you want to do this now?" "I am," Marina replied. "Big brother, there's something I want to give you." Beatrice handed me the box. Inside were several documents, some photos, and a sealed envelope. "What is this?" I asked. "It's my inheritance for you," Marina said. "Rodrigo, I never had a lot of money, but I always saved everything I could. And when I found out I was going to die, I asked a lawyer to organize everything. I opened one of the documents and almost passed out. It was an amount I had never seen in my life." "Marina, where did this money come from?" I asked, incredulous. 20 years of saving," she explained. "I never spent money on anything unnecessary because I didn't have a family to buy presents for, a house to decorate, a husband to travel with. So I saved everything. But this is a lot of money. And there's more," she smiled. "Open the envelope." Inside the envelope was another document. It was a detailed social project, with blueprints, budgets, everything. "Marina," I said, unable to fully process what I was seeing. "It's a project for you to open a community center," she explained. "A place for lonely people to find each other. Seniors who have no family, young people who have aged out of orphanages, people like the 3 of us." Man, I was in total shock. My little sister had planned all this. "The name is already chosen," she continued. "The Marina Beatrice Rodrigo Center, with all 3 of our names." "Marina," Beatrice said, also crying. "Daughter, when did you do all this?" "In the last 2 months," she replied. "On the days you thought I was sleeping, I was working on this. I wanted to leave something that showed our family existed, that it made a difference." She looked at me with those eyes that always managed to see my soul. "Rodrigo, will you agree to coordinate this project?" "Marina, I don't know if I'm capable." "You are," she interrupted me. "And Mom will help you. You'll do this together, as a family." Beatrice approached the bed. "Marina, my daughter, how did you manage to think of all this?" "Because you taught me that love is action," she replied. "You didn't just say you loved me. You acted. You changed your Lives for me. And now I want to act too. Marina started to speak more slowly. She was getting weaker. Rodrigo, promise me you'll take care of Mom? I promise, I said without hesitation. And promise you won't close yourself off from the world again. I promise. And promise you'll help other people find their families. I promise everything, Marina. She smiled and closed her eyes for a moment. Mom, she called to Beatrice. Thank you for giving me the best months of my life. Thank you. Daughter, Beatrice replied, kissing her forehead, for teaching me what it means to be a mother. Marina looked at both of us and said, you know I'll always be with you, right? Whenever you're taking care of someone, whenever you're doing good, I'll be there. She took a deep breath and continued. And there's one last thing I want you to know. I'm dying fulfilled. I got to have a family. I got to be a daughter and a sister. I got to love and be loved. It doesn't matter how long it lasted. What matters is that it happened. Man, the three of us stayed there, holding hands until dawn. Marina fell asleep around 5 a.m., and at 6:47 a.m., she passed away. In peace, smiling, surrounded by love. It was the saddest and most beautiful day of my life at the same time. But the biggest surprise came after the funeral, when we discovered that Marina had left us with much more than just money and projects. Man, you won't believe what happened 3 days after the funeral. I was at home, still, shaken by everything, when there was a knock on my door. It was a guy in a suit, all formal, with a briefcase in his hand. Rodrigo Silva? He asked. That's me. Who's asking? Dr. Fernando Almeida, attorney. I need to speak with you about some documents left by Ms. Marina Santos. My heart raced. What documents? Marina hadn't told me about anything besides that letter and the savings account. The attorney came in, sat at my dining table, and opened his briefcase. He took out some papers that looked important, the kind with a lot of stamps and signatures. Mr. Rodrigo, Ms. Marina contacted me 2 months ago to make some changes to her will. She left very specific instructions on how to distribute her assets. Doctor, with all due respect, but Marina didn't have much. She told me herself it was just a small savings. The attorney smiled in a somewhat enigmatic way. Mr. Rodrigo, Ms. Marina was more private than you imagined. She received a considerable inheritance from a patient she cared for a few years ago. An elderly woman with no family who became very fond of her. Man, I was stunned. What did he mean, a considerable inheritance? How much are we talking about, doctor? I asked, still not believing it. $350,000, Mr. Rodrigo. I almost fell out of my chair. $350,000. It was more money than I had seen in my entire life, all put together. And she left it all divided equally between you and Dr. Beatrice, with one specific condition. What condition? The attorney read directly from the document. The money must be used exclusively for the creation of a community center for people in situations of loneliness, abandoned seniors, and young people without family. The project must be run jointly by the two beneficiaries. Man, I started to cry right there, in front of the attorney. Marina had planned everything. She knew we would want to help people, and she had found a way to make it possible. There's one more thing, the doctor continued. She left this letter to be delivered only after you knew about the inheritance. I opened the letter with trembling hands. My dear Rodrigo, if you're reading this, you already know about the money. I'm sorry I didn't tell you before, but I wanted you and Dr. Beatrice to help me out of love, not for the money, even though I knew you would never do that. This money came from an old lady named Miss Irene, whom I took care of for 2 years. She had no family and considered me like a granddaughter. When she died, she left everything to me. I always knew one day I would pass it on. I just didn't know to whom. Now I know. You will use this money to create something beautiful, something that will save many lives. You will call other Marinas who are out there, lost and alone. Rodrigo, you have a special gift. You can see other people's pain. Use that. The world needs more people like you. P.S. There's one last surprise in the envelope, something that can help you get started faster. Forever your sister, Marina. In the envelope were the keys and the deed to a townhouse in a Chicago neighborhood. Marina had bought the property a year ago, without telling anyone. The place was perfect, big, with a backyard, in a neighborhood where this kind of project was truly needed. I called Dr. Beatrice immediately and told her everything. She was silent for about 2 minutes. Then she started to laugh and cry at the same time. That girl, even after. She's gone. She's still taking care of us, she said. The following Saturday, the two of us went to see the house. It was an old townhouse, but well maintained. There was a big living room that could be a common area, bedrooms that could become therapy rooms for psychological counseling, a perfect industrial kitchen for communal meals. Rodrigo, can you imagine this place full of life? Seniors playing checkers in the living room, children playing in the backyard, people finding a new family. I could imagine it, man. And it was so beautiful. We spent the next 2 months dealing with paperwork, licenses, and renovations. Dr. Beatrice knew a lot of people who agreed to help. Doctors, psychologists, social workers. I used my contacts from the neighborhood to find people who were truly in need. The name was my idea. Marina House, a place for connection and new beginnings. Dr. Beatrice loved it. 6 months after the funeral, we had the inauguration. Man, it was so moving. People showed up on the first day. Seniors who were alone at home. Young people who had aged out of the foster care system. People who simply needed a place to belong. Mr. Anthony, 78, had lost his wife, and his kids no longer called him. Jessica, 19, had left the orphanage and had nowhere to go. Miss Mary, 65, was raising her 3 grandchildren alone. Every person who came to Marina House brought a story of pain, but also of hope. The most beautiful thing was seeing these people connect. Mr. Anthony became Jessica's adopted grandfather. Ms. Mary found friends in the house she hadn't had in years. The kids gained a bunch of honorary grandparents. Dr. Beatrice came out of retirement and became the medical coordinator of the project. I stopped driving for the rideshare app and dedicated myself full-time to the house. We got partnerships with the city, donations from companies, and volunteer work from college students. In 1 year, Marina House had already helped more than 300 people. Some would come just to talk and have a coffee. Others would stay for lunch. Some even moved to boarding houses nearby just to be closer to our crazy family. The most moving thing was seeing people arrive broken by life and leave with a sparkle in their eyes. The same transformation I had experienced when I met Marina and Dr. Beatrice. Every 15th of the month, the day Marina died, Dr. Beatrice and I go to her grave to tell her the news. We bring flowers, but most of all, we bring stories of the people the house has helped. Marina, today Mr. Joe got a job after being unemployed for 2 years. Carla got into college. Miss Vera made peace with her daughter. Are you seeing how your idea is working from up there? Sometimes I swear I can feel her smiling, you know? Like she's proud of us. Folks, this story doesn't end here, because what happened next was even more incredible. 2 years after the house opened, we received an unexpected visit. A woman in her 40s showed up, crying, saying she had seen a TV report about us. "Did you know Marina Santos?" she asked. We confirmed, and she broke down in tears. She was my older sister. We got separated when we were children at the orphanage. I spent my whole life looking for her. Man, it was a complete shock. Marina had a sister and never knew it. The woman's name was Christina, and she had managed to get adopted when she was little, but she never forgot the little sister who was left behind. Christina became one of the house's biggest volunteers. She said it was her way of connecting with Marina's memory. And you won't believe it, she brought her 2 teenage children to help out too. Suddenly, our family had grown even more. Today, 5 years after that rainy Thursday night, Marina House serves more than 1,000 people a year. We have psychologists, doctors, social workers, art teachers, and support groups. We've become a go-to place in Chicago for helping people in situations of emotional vulnerability. I married Patricia, a volunteer psychologist I met at the house. Dr. Beatrice is dating Dr. Charles, a retired cardiologist who started frequenting the project. We joke that Marina must be up there playing matchmaker for everyone. You know what the craziest thing is? I still drive for the rideshare app on weekends, but now it's by choice, not out of necessity. And every time I get a passenger, I remember the night that changed my life. Sometimes we have deep conversations. Sometimes the person just wants silence. But I always agree to talk. I always pay attention to the signs that someone might be in need of help, because that's what Marina taught me. We never know when someone might be going through the worst time of their life and desperately needs a shoulder to lean on, a kind word, or just someone to listen. How many Marinas must be out there, alone, waiting for someone to stop and see their pain? How many Dr. Beatrices are closing themselves off from the world after a loss? How many Rodrigos are wasting their lives because they're afraid to connect with people? The truth is that everyone is fighting a battle we know nothing about. Everyone needs love, attention, and care. And sometimes a conversation, a gesture of kindness, a hand extended can save a life. I learned that family isn't just who you're born with. Family is who chooses to stay, who cares, who takes care of you. I gained a sister and a mother on a rainy Thursday night. And even though I lost my sister, I gained a purpose for my entire life. Every month, when I visit Marina's grave, I always end by saying the same thing. Thank you, sis. Thank you for turning my life into a story worth telling. And that's why today, whenever I get in my car to work, I leave my heart open to whatever comes my way. Because we never know when life will put someone in our path who needs us, or someone who will change our lives forever. Marina taught me that miracles happen every day. Sometimes they come disguised as a tragedy, sometimes as a ride-share conversation on a rainy night. The important thing is to have an open heart to receive them. And you, after hearing this whole story, how about you stop and think? When was the last time you really talked to someone? When was the last time you extended a hand to someone who needed it? Because honestly, life is too short to waste opportunities to make a difference. And sometimes, making a difference can be as simple as accepting a conversation, giving a hug, or just being present. Marina lives on in every person Marina House helps. She lives on in every hug we give, in every smile we bring to someone who was sad. And she lives on in the certainty that love, real, genuine, selfless love, is still the most powerful force in the world. That's it, folks. This was the story of the rideshare conversation that made me cry and changed my life forever. A story about how 3 strangers became family, about how death can generate life, about how true love never dies. And you, what will your next story be?